Well, it's spinning. All right, everybody, welcome to Constricted and Addicted. I am Gary, and this is Retic Rant, and this is like a special episode for me. You know, I really love reticulated pythons, and when I'm seeing women that are keeping and caring for and breeding reticulated pythons, it's just like these guys are rocking it. They are absolutely rocking it. But before I introduce to you who's on the panel today, there's a couple of things I want to put out there for people that I recognize because, like I said before, I don't have all the bells and whistles and all of the good stuff. But you know what? There's people that I look up to and I'd like to recognize them. And one of them is Ship Your Reptiles. If you guys are out there and you need to put snakes on planes or reptiles on planes, please get a hold of Ship Your Reptiles. Sean and Susie are awesome people, and they'll get you taken care of. I also would like to recognize D&T Retics, Jackson Taylor. They are awesome people. If you looking for a mainland retic, out to Jackson Taylor. They're very friendly, down to earth, and they will help you out. One other I like to mention, if you're looking for super dwarfs, New Shed Serpent, Chris and Sarah McVicker. I have a lot of my snakes that have come from New Shed Serpents, so I always want to give them a plug. And the last plug I'm going to give is to the Retic Lounge, Nathan and Lucas. Those guys run an awesome show. So if you are into retics, if you're looking for anything, please hit these people up. If you're looking to ship reptiles, please go to Ship Your Reptiles. And you know what? We are going to go ahead and introduce the three women that are here. We're supposed to have four, and maybe Caitlin will come in later. But the first person I'd like to introduce to you is Gina Rock with Reptiles. Nicole with Lady Tiz Exotics. And Jen Codwin, who doesn't have a brand or a name, but she's an awesome person. And you know, I'd like to welcome everybody that's tuning in. And before we get started, I would really like to encourage people, if you have questions about reticulated python care or keeping, please get those questions up there. We're going to throw it at the women, and we're going to let them take care of the answers. I'm going to start off with Gina. I'm just going to roundtable this and tell us a little bit about yourself.
I don't know. I'm not that interesting, but I've got a bunch of reptiles. I started actually when I was a kid. I started keeping turtles because that was the only thing my parents would let me have. So I had a bunch of turtles growing up, and I still have a lot of turtles. But now I also have 23 reticulated pythons and a pair of Angolan pythons, a pair of rough scale pythons, a boa, one ball python, and a hognose snake. So I've got quite a bit. I also have 3 dogs and 4 cats. Yeah, so it's a full house here for sure.
That is awesome. Did you say 23 reticulated pythons?
Yeah, they're all dwarf and super dwarf, but yeah, 23.
That adds up to a lot.
All right. Jen, we're going to go to you next. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm a fairly new keeper. I've only had this guy. I'm probably the outlier that only has one retic. I've had him for about a year. He lives in my hair mostly, and also in his enclosure. But I have, I've got 2 cats. I've got a beardy. I've got a leopard gecko. I've got about 10 ball pythons. I've got a king snake, a short-tailed python, a children's python, a hognose, and 4 boas. I've got a little mix of everything, and you know, grew up collecting animals that my parents would let me have and keeping them incorrectly, and feel really bad about it now that we know about husbandry. And I just, to those that I didn't keep properly as a kid, and just trying to do better now.
That's awesome. Thank you. A woman who needs no introduction in my world. Nikki, tell us a little bit about yourself. your passion drives. So let's hear about you.
Not much different from the other women. I feel like I'm at home. We have a full house here too. Everybody knows my reticulated pythons are amongst my favorites. So I have 8 of those. All mainland except for one. And to Gina, dwarf retics are actually, to me, more complicated than mainland. So a retic is a retic. And then we have 2 berms. We have the Asian water monitor, 2 tegels, 2 turtles, 12 tarantulas, a corn snake, 5 boa constrictors, green tree python. I have to actually look around because I forget everything all the time.
I forgot my corn snakes. Yeah.
Yes. Oh, the carpet. We have the carpet python. We have the Ackie monitors. And I know I'm forgetting something and whatever. Oh goodness, my ball pythons. I'm a ball python as well. Lord, peace and mercy. And there's a lot of them. And then I have a clutch of reticulated pythons who will actually be hatching any day now. So, and those were 22 eggs hatched, 20 made it through all the way through incubation and should be hatching any day now.
Congrats.
Well, that's awesome. That is awesome. So,
I forgot the dog. See, my dog just barked like, you forgot about the dogs again.
Oh, those 4-legged animals. Yeah.
So we'll start with Jen on this one. And how long have you been keeping reptile? Well, let's start with how long you've been keeping retics. And then you can expand. Retics.
Actually, this month, April, will be a year that I've had this guy. Yeah. Like I said, I only have 1 retic, so I'm probably the outlier. And
for now.
Probably because, and it's not that I don't want more, but I'm still learning this guy. So yeah, I've had him for a year. He is a year old. He was hatched in February, and I got him in April. So I've had him for happy Gotcha Day to him. And he's still he's not your typical, from what you hear, he's tiny. He's a teeny weeny. I feed him. I swear to God, he eats. He's just like a string bean. And so I feel like I don't know what it is to keep a retic because he's not representative of his breed, I guess. I don't know. So he's not really helping me decide whether we want a second one because he's teeny tiny. He's super polite. His food drive is not crazy. He's very polite in taking his meals. I can take him out with my hands. Like, I don't know. He's not really helping me decide whether or not he needs a brother or sister.
One of the things is when you say I've only been keeping for a year, hopefully there's people here that need to hear that.
Yeah,
you know,
well, I think that's
need to relate with that 1 year experience.
I'm trying to figure out, what it is to keep him, and I'm not even really sure yet because he hasn't exploded. I'm sure there's a growth spurt that's coming, and I don't want to get a second, a third, a fourth until I know what's going. Also, I live in an apartment, so it's not really responsible for me to get a second, a third, a fourth. I would love to because I see all the pictures and my finger twitches on. But I'm not going to do that because I still don't know what I'm dealing with. Like, he comes from a really tiny bloodline from what I understand, but that really means nothing. He could be 6 feet. He could be 8 feet. He could be 9 feet. We don't know. So I don't want to push the envelope until I really understand what I'm dealing with, until I have the space. So I'm probably that person that's good to speak to the new keepers. Like, don't go click crazy and get 3 or 4 without knowing what you're dealing with, because I'm still learning what I'm dealing with this guy. There.
Right on. Thanks, Gina, with 23 reticulated pythons, how long have you been keeping?
The Retics, I'm kind of new, honestly.
See, that's what happened right there.
That's what, yeah. So everybody, you got to follow Jen's advice. Don't do what I do. But, yeah, I got a dwarf retic 3 years ago, and I just fell in love. And I was like, I want to get more, and I want to breed these animals.
Hard.
And I'm lucky that we have the space. And the plan is to eventually build a separate building for the reptiles on the property. So, but for now, we have in the house we have plenty of room. So, it kind of escalated very quickly. But I like the number that I'm at now. I don't think I'm definitely not looking to add many more. So.
All right. And Nicole, how about you? How long you been keeping retics?
Just over 4 years. April would have been 4 years that I got the very first one. Like Gina, I would love to have 50. Like if I could, I'm serious. If I had the space in the house, I literally would have 50 reticulated pythons. Because
add to cart.
For me, it's I don't find keeping them that strenuous because I had the time to keep them and I had the time to dedicate to them and I had the space. And one of the things I find for me is easier with the space. And Gina, when you have the space, they pretty much, when you let them out, they kind of like self-manage and wear themselves out. So it's not like I have to be walking around with retics all the time. It's not the case. I don't want no one to even think that. Y'all ever seen me get one out, a heavy one, a 16-footer? I'm sweating. I don't want to walk around the house with it. But I think in my experience, I definitely would want more. It's space that restrict me. So God forbid, Gina, if I had the space you have, it would be
game on
in here. Yeah, exactly. But it's amazing to keep them. I do think, like to what Jen was saying, I started out getting my first one saying I want to breed them. I knew exactly. I had a list of all the morphs I wanted. But by the time I got to the fourth one, I said, everybody can't take care of these. Like, we can. And I want, even with the clutch that I have now, the biggest thing is that the people I sell to are being interviewed. If I don't think you can keep these animals for the long term of their lives, it could sit right here. Then my excuse to my husband is that I couldn't find anybody to sell it to. So now we have 20 articulated pythons.
Right.
Jen and I have had this conversation before, which is kind of funny. Because I would never breed. I'm not a breeder. I'm a keeper. But we've talked with each other about, if you're to breed animals, you have to have like a background check and social security number. Like your last 12 years of keeping, we want to have all this information. Otherwise, you can't have the animal. You don't have it.
Thank you. Yeah. Good job. Yeah, like come have coffee with me. Look me in the eye. Also, bring a background check. I would never be able to let babies go. I don't know. I'm
like, when did you handle them? Like, okay, yes, I've handled a baby. Have you handled a 16-footer? Is there someone in your community or a breeder nearby that I can, introduce you to that you can go visit to maybe handle one of those? Because I think, and Gary, we talked about it a little bit earlier. We a lot of times think about the animal itself, but the financial expense of feeding this animal long term. For me, Jen, I have all mainlands except for one. They were already 10, 11 feet in year one. So they were at rabbits. And that's, it's like first you give them a little weaned, you give them a little small, give them a little medium. Then somehow they just skip from medium to jumbos, and then it's rabbits. And so I think one of the things that people should talk about, not just the animal, the expense, you really have to be, I'm not claiming to be wealthy, but you have to have an excess of finances to take care of those animals through the term, even from one enclosure, and you bought an enclosure 3 years or 4 years ago, and it was only $900. Now that same enclosure today is $2,700. You have to be prepared for all that.
Oh yeah, definitely.
there's a huge expense when it comes to reticulated pythons, and a lot of that is in the setup, because if you buy, all of my 6 feet and under, they're in 4 foot enclosures. But as soon as they get to 6 foot, they're going into 8 foot enclosures. Now you're talking about a cage that can cost up to $2,000. The lighting, the heating, everything that goes with that. So I mean, there is a big expense when you start thinking that reticulated pythons are a good pet. You not only do you have to be the person that can be able to take care of one of these animals. Financially, you have to be able to take care of these animals as well. They are not a cheap pet in any way, shape, or form, especially when you own 3 of them, right, Gina?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, not cheap. And even with the dwarf and super dwarf, the food bill is very expensive.
Because they eat the same. The dwarfs for me is still hungry.
Oh yeah, yeah. Yep, exactly.
Weird, right?
I don't know who
love
that a super dwarf is smaller or a dwarf is smaller, so therefore it eats smaller or less. No. I think with my dwarf, the only difference is it may not reach that rabbit size as quickly or ever compared to the mainlands, but when it eats, it wants to eat.
Oh yeah. You're still talking about jumbo, extra larges,
Don't think this little slender thing don't want a jumbo. It wants it.
Exactly.
We've got a spaghetti string here, and he'll take a weaned rat.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
So that will bring me to my next question, and I'll get a separate question for Jen, but give us the difference. Gina, do you have any mainlands, or are you just doing super dwarf and dwarf?
Right now I just have super dwarf and dwarf.
Okay.
So
the dwarves actually can get a little bit larger than the super dwarves.
Mm-hmm.
So the question is really the difference between a mainland retic and a locality reticulated python. And my experience is that the mainland reticulated pythons tend to be a little bit more confident. They tend to be a little bit more methodic, I guess, in their
large and in charge.
Yes, large and in charge.
I'm not afraid because I'm me.
Even though my super dwarfs are all very, very handleable and very docile animals, they still have a little bit of a skittish side to them. And so I'm going to have you, Gina, you go ahead and talk about super dwarf demeanor and dwarf demeanor.
Yeah, so I guess I've noticed, some of them can be skittish. I mean, with 23, I have the gambit of personalities. So I have one of my smallest Retics, he's 2, but he's 50% Bantang Sulawesi and 25% Kalatoa and 25% Karampa. But
that's going to be a big animal.
Yeah.
Well, so far he's tiny, but he acts like he has the confidence of a mainland, with that Sulawesi in him, So I love his personality. He's probably my favorite. I post him all the time. But yeah, he comes out of the enclosure. He roams around. I have my reptile room snake proof so they can roam around and get their energy out. But yeah, so he's great. I love his personality. But then, yeah, I do have some, especially, I won't even say the pure localities, because I have 2.3 Kalatoas and 1.1 Kaiwati. Some of the morph crosses I guess I have can be a little skittish. I have it's hit or miss. I would say the majority are very friendly and active and want to come out of the enclosure and explore and have confidence, but they can be a little skittish. So I'm always if I go in and I'm checking on everybody, I try to be a little more cautious until I get them out of the enclosure or whatever. I do hear a lot that some people say that the super dwarfs and dwarfs can be more flighty or skittish, but I think it really just depends on the individual animal, at least in my experience.
You got the Kaiwati from Lucas, correct? We got ours on the same day. Is that correct? I remember that.
Yep. Yeah, I got a male from him, and then I have a 3-year-old female. So.
Yeah, my Kaiwati from Lucas is absolutely one of my favorites and probably one of my most docile for being a purebred Coyote. She's as confident as a mainland. She really is. Super, super awesome animal. Nicole, how about you? So you've got one dwarf and you've got mainlands. Do you notice any difference between the two as far as demeanor and temperament?
Yep. The confidence is everything, but believe it or not, the food response. The dwarf has the greater food response. If I go in that room where the dwarf is with a frozen dog, anything, she's at the glass. She's ready. Where the mainlands are still pretty much going to stay in place until I slide the door open and begin to feed.
Well, they want to be served.
Kind of, right, yeah. Or I think that they also, because they are older and that they are like the confidence, like, I'm going to get the food. I don't have to blast out. I'm going to
I know it's coming.
Right? If I want the food, I can get the food. I also think with the super dwarf, with the dwarf, once he's out the enclosure, or she's out the enclosure, she will spend more time on me, where the mainlands want to roam. Like, so kind of how Jim can sit there with the dwarf, I can do that with the dwarf once she's out. Where the mainlands will hang on me a little bit, but then they just want to go and roam. Or if they don't want to roam, typically they're not coming out the enclosure when I open it up. Where the smaller one seems to want to be handled a lot more than the mainlands, like physically handled, attached to you a little bit more.
Needy.
Jen, what about you? Now you've got a super dwarf.
Yeah.
Do you have the desire to add a mainland at some point in time?
I got the trigger figure. I would. The only thing that makes me pause is, and I know you've spoken about it previously in your other lives, is the prey that they need. But you know what? All right. So I grew up with mice and rats as pets. So when I first got snakes, I was squeamish. I did it because you have to, and I still to this day I thank them for their service. But every once in a while, like the shipment that I just recently got, they were just positioned in such a peaceful little sweet way, and it gets me. I don't know, it still gets me. So I'm like, could I feed a rabbit or a piglet to something? And I had rabbits as pet. I don't know. I'd like to think that I could get to that point where I could, but it does give me pause. I don't know.
It's a little easier. One thing I love about Retics, period, is that in my experience, it's never a reason to feed them live. Even a Retic, you know. So for me, it's a dead guinea pig, it's a dead rabbit. It's funny for me to watch them eat because I was telling Gary, my mainlands will squeeze a deceased water-filled rabbit.
Yeah, alive. It's already dead, dude.
Like you're draining the water, you're killing the water out of it.
Whatever you feel you need to do, do your show. It's fine.
Yeah. No, I've talked about this a lot, and I think it's important for people to understand. These very baby retics that you find on Morph Market, or maybe you go to someone's house, or even a pet store. They have a serpentarium here, and I walk in there, and they have baby retics there, and they look very cute when they're small, but when they're 4 or 5 years old, and you've graduated from rodents to rabbits, even myself, I this day when I'm unthawing that rabbit and I'm putting it on the tongs, I'm still going, wow, that's a cute little rabbit there,
Well, also, can you get rabbits? Can you get piglets? Like, I mean, the shipping for just the rats for the rest of my snakes is substantial. I don't have anybody local that I can go pick up frozen thawed from, so I have to consider, who I can get dinner from and what the shipping is. So, that's always a thought.
Well, thank God. One thing you don't have to worry about in the Maryland, Pennsylvania area is food for reptiles. We have
That's
so
I
many
thought about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's always going to be somebody that has someone that didn't make it that'll give it to you. Yeah.
Yep.
So let's talk about responsible reptile keeping. I know that Nikki brought this up earlier when we were talking. It's one of my favorite topics because it's important. We're all members of USARC here, and if USARC has that they talk about being responsible reptile keepers, especially since we own reticulated pythons, right? Gina, what does responsible reptile keeping mean to you?
For me, it's first of all making sure you research an animal before you get it, so that when you get it, you know how to properly quarantine it, how to properly set it up, and then making sure that you're giving it what it needs to not just survive but thrive.
Yes.
So especially like for my dwarf and super dwarf retics, they love to climb, they love to explore. So giving them enclosures where they can climb, where they can bask, where they can, some of them might even like to burrow in the substrate. Or if they're on paper, at least giving like a humid hide where they have enough room that they can burrow in the substrate. So just giving them all those opportunities, making sure that they have a hot spot and a cold spot so they can self-regulate, and making sure and monitoring them too, as well. So sometimes you try things and you're like, maybe they start pushing or something. So you got to figure that out. Do you need a larger enclosure? Is your heat too high? Just making sure it's not just a set it and forget it kind of thing. It's, you're constantly monitoring it and, making sure you're providing the best that you can, because, all my animals, they're pets first. So I want to make sure that I'm taking the best care of them and that they're having the best life that they possibly can.
Yeah.
And I think that's what everybody should do.
Definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. How about you, Jen?
Yeah, no, research, like that's a hot button issue. I wish anybody, it doesn't even matter reptile or not, if you're gonna get, even if you're gonna buy a new coffee pot, you should check reviews. I don't know, but people don't do it, and it saddens me. Like, if you're gonna take on an animal, whether it be a kitten, a dog, do you have what it takes? Do you have the space? Do you have the time? I didn't get any of my snakes until I didn't get a snake, period, until, I had like lizards, and I had a Euromastix, and we had geckos when we were younger, and turtles and frogs, but I didn't get a snake, period, until I had done a year worth of research, and just to make sure, can I afford what it needs, and so many people don't do it, and I don't want to blame them. They just, I don't know. They don't think they need to. I don't know. But research is the key. Like, good God, please, there's a million YouTube videos out there. There's a million, check Repti files, check anybody, like go on Gary's channel, go on Nicole's channel. Like, everybody's there to tell you what you do and don't want to do. And I just think it's so sad when somebody gets an animal that they're not ready for, and then they decide, this was a bad idea. And then they feel helpless. I feel bad for them, So everything that I've ever gotten, I did research first. Do they need UVB? Do they not need UVB? Do they need, is underbelly heat? Do they need overhead? Should I do, a CHE? Should I do like a panel? Like, just figure out what you need, because they're not pet rocks. They're really not. They do things, and they move around, and they like things, and they don't like things, and it's not. Ball pythons are the perfect example. Like, everyone thinks they just sit there, but no, they have preferences. They do. They need they're shy and they need somewhere to hide, and they like heat, and they don't want to be hot. They go to the other side. Like, do the research. Do the research. It's not hard. And I wish more people did the research. And I'm sorry. There we go.
All right, Nikki, follow it up, and then we're going to put a question up there. So go ahead and follow up this question with responsible reptile keeping.
Yep. So of course the research is important, but I think one of the things that people should always keep in mind is that after you research, it then becomes the experience. And somebody, I think, Harsh Reptile said it in the comments. You have to pay attention to the animals, because one thing Gina said, and I'm telling y'all, every reticulated python that I have, if you see, the enclosures are set up differently. None of them have the same enclosure. It's customized to how I watch that first 4 to 12 months of that animal. And like that belief that mainlands don't climb. I have half of my mainlands, when they come out, the first thing they do go high. So they are the ones that you see that are in the taller enclosures. I have other ones that may not climb, but because I know that this group can climb, when we customize their enclosure, I want it 3 and 4 feet high instead of 2 feet. Now, those who seem to utilize the paper to use the bathroom, you'll see those that have half paper and the rest substrate, because I noticed that they make it easier for me by going on the paper. Whatever that's about in their head, I don't know, but it works for me. So we're going to roll with it. And then I have others who don't care if it's paper or not. They're going to poop in their water or whatever. They're going to poop anywhere. And so therefore I give them the substrate that they seem to like, because like, you know, you said they burrows. You have some retics who like to fold the substrate over top of them. And if you don't pay attention to the snakes individually, then you're not being responsible, because when we said to thrive, in order for them to thrive, we have to give them the best that they want. And before we go to the question, I want to touch on that too, because that conversation about what type of enclosure a reticulated python needs. And I'm going to say this to everybody who has your snake in an 8-footer or a 10-footer, and you're constantly hearing people say that they have rooms. I hate retics that will kill themselves if they had a whole room. I have retics who can climb this entire house very responsibly and find their way back home without injuring anything. I can't tell you which one is which when they're born, but I would just say pay attention, because sometimes people think that you can just, because it's a retic, it needs a whole room. No, some of them can actually, because of their behavior, harm themselves. Like if you have a retic that climbs on everything, it doesn't realize 80 pounds is going to knock this whole etagere off and it's going to fall on the snake, right? And so we have to think about those type of things too. So the best thing for me is, I'll say to anyone, to be most responsible, once you do the research, the basic research on the animal, then really start experiencing your animal. So the experience of owning the animal can be your true teacher.
That's awesome. Before we go to the question, there's a weird audio sound coming from somebody. I don't know if it's Gina, but it sounds like somebody is snoring next to you. So,
is there a dog?
If you've got something you're aware of, maybe we can drown the sound out a little bit. But Gina, I'm going to ask you to go ahead and start off this next question.
Okay. Can you still hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Is it whatever it was better?
Yes.
I don't hear
Yeah.
it.
Okay, cool. I just turned the mic sensitivity down, so
Okay.
the dishwasher's running. Okay, so the question here, this is a question that I have thought about because I have tortoises. So they should outlive me, honestly.
Yeah.
So this is something I have 2 cousins that are lawyers, so I want to work with them to set up some sort of like trust fund for the reptiles. So God forbid I die before them. I mean, really, I should die before the tortoises because they're young and they should live for 100+ years. But yeah, so either a rescue. So I know there's some rescues where you can actually set up set it up in advance to have your animals go there. If you have family members, which is what I'm hoping for, that my nieces and nephews will take on care of the tortoises. And then, I would provide some money to help them care for them after I'm gone. So that would be, I don't know how to set that up legally. So that's what I'm kind of in the process of looking over. So yeah, that's something that I've definitely been concerned with, and something to think about, even with, your dogs and cats as well. I know dogs and cats are easier to rehome, but you definitely need to think about this stuff. We recently had, my husband had a family member pass away that was older, and it was his grandfather in his 80s, and he didn't even have a will. So even, it's so important to have these things, and especially if you have animals or, anything like that. You really need to look into that. And another thing that somebody had recommended was documenting like all your animals, you know, taking pictures of the enclosures, just so people know if they're adopted out and they at least have some records. Like if you have the food records,
Oh.
sheds, like if you can just keep that documented, like I have a spreadsheet so that somebody could say, okay, well, this is what they've been eating. This is when they normally,
That's
you
a
know,
good
they do it
idea.
every so many months. So stuff like that. If you keep track of all that and then have some sort of will or something set up, definitely. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's great information. Thank you. Jen, what about you?
I have one niece who she has a leopard gecko, so she's well on her way. I hope. I have tortoises as well, so yeah, 75 years, right? I assume, Izzy, if you're watching, you're gonna take all my babies and love them like I do. But that's a really good point to document their care. Yeah. I mean, I thought about it. Actually, someone asked me about it not that long ago. Like, how long do tortoises live? And I'm like, yeah, like 50 plus years. So I just assumed it will be my family members, like my cousin's kids or whatever. And whoever doesn't like snakes, I don't know. I'm going to have to figure that out. Like some sort of rescue or somebody who will love them. I don't know. Somebody love them. Somebody. I don't know. I've thought about some of it, but not all of it. And that's actually a really good point. So I haven't really thought about a will, period, but I guess I need to start.
See, that's what Retic Rant does. It gets us talking about retics in our preparation for the end of life.
Yeah, and our imminent demise. We gotta think about it.
How about you, Nikki?
I'm totally opposite. Because my degree is in mortuary science, so I have seen some horrible things happen in the time of death. I have written my own obituary in my voice, and I update it every single year since I was 16 years old.
Okay.
There is a will. There is very specific details for my husband or whomever of what animals that must stay inside this family and who they should go to. And then, like for the ball pythons, which are easier, just call Terrence Keys. Terrence Keys will make sure that they are appropriately sold or whatever that him and my husband organized. But my retics and my water monitors, so because they're special animals, they can't just go to anybody. They are very specific. So they're the ones that are produced by Jim Jolly. The first thing my husband is to do is to contact Jim Jolly. The ones that's produced by Nerd, he contacts Kevin directly. The Asian water monitor, you contact Kevin directly, and then you go from there. Now, there's some that cannot be sold. My husband has to keep it. My spider ball python must stay with my husband until it dies. My turtles must go to my nephews until they die. And then I have like the green tree python that I just want to make sure that you find a good home for it, but it's no specific home for that because that's an animal that a person with experience on a green tree python can keep with no problem. My reticulated pythons and my Asian water monitors is down to the T. Who you call, how much if you want to sell them, how much you should be selling them for, because my husband wouldn't know all of that. If you're not going to sell them, who they should go to. Like if you're giving them to Kevin, you give them to Kevin. But if you're selling a golden child cow, this is how much you should sell for. So we have all of that written out because that is, believe it or not, is one of my biggest fears. Now, my hope is my granddaughter, she always talk about taking over the business. So I'm hoping that if something shall happen, my husband knows enough and my son are invested enough to help her continue to raise them until she's independent enough to continue to breed ball pythons.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. But that's
actually like scrap what I just said. If something were to happen to me suddenly and horribly, I'm just gonna have my fiance contact Gary, and Gary will school him in who might want to take and who might want to sell and who might want to have to breed
and who not to give it to.
Man, and he will. That's fine. Gary, you are my reptile emergency contact.
Special ring to it. Can you say my name one more time, Jen? Say my name one more time.
Gary.
Yeah.
Gary.
So I would also like to entertain this last question before we go to this question. And I've actually thought about this. I've talked with a friend of mine. I've also heard some really good ideas here because I think I'm probably the oldest person in the panel. I'm 53 years old. So if you're not older than 53, it's definitely something that I've been thinking about because I have sulcata tortoises. I have 2 sulcata tortoises, and they're not like, you can't just go pick these animals up. They are heavy. They are, I mean, they may end up staying right where they are. So it's going to require special attention for, if something was to happen to me, they would have to set a plan on how to remove the tortoises. So that is something that we have talked about. The reticulated pythons, they can live for up to 30 years with good care. And that's why a lot of what I'm doing right now is focused on where do I see myself in the next 10 years of keeping. I mean, I don't know if anybody else thinks about that. It's like when I look at myself at 70 years old with a 16-foot snake, how attractive does that look? But I do a lot of things for myself as well that will hopefully keep me in the realm of handling these animals just like I do now. You know, I don't see myself being a couch potato in the next 10 years. So that's, you know, there's something, it's a lot of things to think about. So there are people that I talk to that in the event that something should happen, that the retics will go to their house. You know, somebody local, they keep retics, so I trust them with retics. This isn't like taking somebody's corn snake off their hands. This is taking a massive animal with massive enclosures that need massive space. And they need massive attention in my world. I don't want my animal to go to somebody who's going to let it sit in a corner and be in a corner. And that's the end of it. They've got to interact with those animals like I interact with them. So, and I love what you said about contacting the person that you bought the animal from. And maybe having
who shares that passion. They love that animal.
Yeah, so that's a great point. I really, really like that. We've got this other question up here, so I'm going to try and when selling to someone, if a permit is required to keep the snake, do you require proof of the permit before that purchase? So I'm not really understanding the question so much. But if somebody else wants to take a look at it, and I'm assuming if you're in the area.
Yeah, so I would say from a broader perspective, when you ship an animal, you pretty much can't ship to an animal if your shipping company is responsible. They're not going to let you ship an animal to a state that they know that you have to have some type of permit and or a state that they are not allowed, right? That's one of the reasons why you have to put the scientific name that none of us know except for the government, the scientific name on the boxes when you're shipping them. I will say for me, if your state requires a permit as a responsible breeder and as a responsible keeper, I think it's on both of us to make sure that the requirements are met because it's like even with a dog. If you buy a dog in a county, you know you can't have a dog. Eventually, the dog suffers, not you.
So there's some weird audio coming in again. I know it's not Gina because she's muted. So now it sounds like somebody's chewing on the microphone. I don't know if anybody else can hear it.
I hear it. That's great.
That sounds
Let me see.
like robots.
Yeah, I think it's yours. You're muted now. But anyways, I'll go back up and say that I do know breeders won't even ship an animal to a state where they know that there is restrictions on that animal. Okay, Jen, it's you.
Say again.
You're the one. Let's see here. I'm gonna mute you. Yeah, it was Jen. Jen was the culprit. Jen's chewing on her mic over there.
It's the retake on the mic.
That's it. Does anybody else want to put some thought into that? Put some put a answer to this question. All right, it's my mic. Is there funky audio coming from my mic?
No, it was Jen. When you muted everybody else, it was Jen.
Okay. All right. All right. Well, I'm gonna.
I want to add to that one, Gary. I think that one of the things I do wish is placed on the salary ticket, and I know, like, we don't want regulation, right? But I do think as part of being responsible, there should be some age requirements on certain reptiles, and a reticulated python being one of them. And I do feel like it should be a requirement for the breeder to verify that you're selling to an adult, not a 16-year-old or 17-year-old who we know can't meet all the requirements we just talked about as a responsible keeper, because they don't have that lifestyle yet. They haven't produced finances for themselves and things like that. So I don't know. I wish that was one of the things. I think morph markets should require someone to certify identification before purchasing everything. I know a lot of people hate for me to say that, but I just wish, even as a person who will be selling these on morph market, wish that someone would have to verify their age before selling them.
Well, that's a good point, and I think that's part of being a responsible reptile keeper. You know, that if you're going to breed the animals and you're going to sell the animals, that you make sure that you're selling the animals to responsible people. And I do know that in some cases you will see on morph market on the sales that they'll say age verification is required. They in some cases, and not all cases, but in some cases it'll say it has some disclaimer about must have experience with large constrictors. And I think that's important because a lot of people, like I said, they get their hands on this beautiful little snake, and in 3 years, that little snake is going to be 10 times the size it is when they get it. So I was speaking about, like, we were talking about the wills and, you know, what do we do with our animals? You know, do we have a game plan? And one of my questions was, where do you see yourself in the next 5 years of keeping? Do you guys look ahead and see, like, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure that you guys are younger than I am, so there's still probably a lot of zealousness and a lot of, you know, I want this and I want this and I want this. I'm at an age now where I'm looking at things and going, I like what I have. And I want to make sure, I don't want to overdo what I have anymore. Like when I was 40, I was like all about, you know, 23, 24 reticulated pythons and all this other stuff, right? But now that I'm, you know, over 50, I'm taking a look at, this is what I'm really comfortable with. And I want to keep the collection the way it is. And it's for many reasons, because again, when I'm 60, 70 years old, some of these animals I'm sure are still going to be alive. And I want them in my life, and I want to be able to give them the same kind of care that I'm giving them now. So do you guys have a game plan for yourselves in the next 5 to 10 years? Gina, what is it, if you have one?
Yeah. I'd like to build a separate reptile building in the next 5 years. That's the goal. Or do my garage, like remodel it for a snake room. I'm only 34, so I'm still kind of young. But, you know, as far as like getting more animals, like I like where I'm at with what I have. I feel like it's a comfortable amount for me, and the care, you know, I can still spend a good amount of time with each snake. And I don't feel overwhelmed, but I don't want to take on too many more. It would have to be like a very particular animal that would fit in with what I'm trying to produce. So really, it's just in the next 5 years, it's all about enclosure upgrades, just making my husbandry the best it can be for the animals. So just a lot of big upgrades coming. Um, so that's really the goal for the next 5 years.
Awesome. How about you, Jen? Next 5 years, you're going to have a mainland and, a corner on Morph Market?
No, I don't think I will ever breed. I don't think I'll ever breed. Again, baby animals are my weakness, so oh no, I can't. No. I would breed and then keep, and then my fiance, if he's watching, I won't do that to you, sir. Yeah, no, I wouldn't be able to do it. Five, I think I'm slowing down. I'm 41. And I have to think about it. I have to think about it in 20 years and 30 years. I mean, there's a few things that I still want. I want a Brettles or Bredley's python. I want a green tree python. The Mister wants an Amazon tree boa, which I'm scared to death of, but whatever, I'm slowly turning him into a reptile person, so that scares me. So together, we're creating this force that cannot be reckoned with. I don't know. But I have to slow down at some point. Space and time is limited. So, I don't want to, as much as I would love to say I want one of everything, which I do, it's not great unless I have the space and time and money for each animal. And I don't have that. And right now, I think I'm good. I think I'm okay. Again, I would love another super dwarf, but I don't even really know what's going to go on. Like, again, he's tiny and, growing very slowly and not very food responsive. And he's kind of not representative of his stately breed. So, I want to get to know him first before I get another one. I would love another one, but I don't know. I gotta pace myself, and that's very hard for me, but I'm trying because I'm melding my life with another person soon. And he says, I don't want to live in a zoo. All right. Well, it's not really up to you. You will live in a zoo. Sorry. But how big of a zoo? That's we'll see.
Awesome. How about you, Dickie? And I think you just, if I'm mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong, I thought you just retired recently, right?
I did. August. I'll be 50 in June. So for me, if I'm being honest, I would say it's slowing down, because I think that outside of the reticulated pythons, anything that dies off, it dies, and I wouldn't replace it. But I waited all this time to become a breeder because I wanted my kids to be grown. Y'all know I have a disabled son, so I wanted him to be able to be a part of helping with the larger animals and everything like that. So I'm perfect position for the breeding, for the educating the new generation of reptile keepers. But as far as individual pets outside of breeding or retics, I don't think that I would add anything, but I can tell you that if I had the space, I would add retics, because for me, they don't, other than the feeding and things like that, they don't require a lot more from me other than, some body strength. And to what you said, Gary, I stay fit for the reticulated pythons. People always ask about my arms and how big they are. I lift retics. I don't lift weights. I do walking and I lift retics, and I swear that's where the arms come from. So the animal itself, it forces you to stay in some type of physical fit condition. Because, now I can't say that I would get 50 retics or 30 retics, right? Because I think that at some point the time in the day will be wearing on your body when they're all big snakes. But the way that all of mine were, they are paced out. You have 3 full grown breeding adults, and you have 3 subadults, and then you have 3 that's right behind the subadults, and like one little dwarf, who's growing. So it's not too much for me. Now I know I wouldn't get more berms, but I definitely would get more retits if I could.
I hear that. I hear that. Gina, how about you?
What was for this the question that just popped up here?
I love that question.
I do like that question. I'm not breeding, but I would love that question.
Did you answer the 5-year question? You did. You were the first one. I'm sorry. So everybody's answered it. Let's Gina, you're first one on this question.
So I haven't bred yet. So I am hoping to potentially get a clutch this year. So excited about that. I have 2 females that could potentially be ready to go. But so far I haven't found it too difficult to kind of I haven't been like out there like blasting my name everywhere, but just through word of mouth and other just with other retic people, just kind of slowly growing my Instagram and everything. But I can't really speak to being like actually selling animals yet in the industry, so I don't know. So far the reception that I've met some amazing people. Everyone's been great, so I do have to say that. So it's a lot of fun. Hanging out with reptile people are great. So
Thank you very much. Nicole, go ahead.
So my experience is a twofold. In the ball python community, absolutely welcomed, loved on, respected, all of it, supported. The reticulated python community, and I say this to make us better, not to put us down, and not the women in this panel, and not most women in the reticulated python community. In fact, in this hobby, the women are incredible. Unfortunately for me, my experience is all with some of the men. And I will shout out, like, again, there's so many men who are 100% biased to whether you are a male or female. But the reality of it is, in order for us to be successful at breeding and selling, we have to attach ourselves to other men in the reticulated python community who helps boost our reputation. And that should not be. I do feel as though once we show that, because I honestly feel like I keep reticulated pythons better than many men that I see, right? So it's not a male or female thing. Gina, there's many men who can handle 23 reticulated pythons and keep them well. So I think where we have to do better is to understand that we are by nature, we're nurturers. So I think women are sometimes the better breeders.
Yes. Okay.
You know what I mean? Like, I think we go to a whole nother level that some men don't even think of. Like, some of the stuff that you see me doing in here with these animals to make them great animals and to produce great offspring, I don't think you're going to see a lot of men doing. These animals get everything except for wined and dined, okay?
Yeah.
Amazing animals. So I will say that once I produced my first clutch, the love and the respect from the men of reticulated python community shifted. And I felt that same love that I felt in the ball python community. But that should have been the way that it was welcomed when I first came in and I said, hey, I'm a woman, I'm coming in and I'm looking to breed. The one man who took me 110% seriously was Kevin McCurley. The day that I walked into his facility and the day that he was amazed. He was amazed. And from that moment, that's where that relationship, he never saw someone as passionate as a, woman like myself when it came to the reticulated python. Of course, he's blessed with ball python women pioneers who've been around him forever, but very few who were as passionate about the animals that we were going to breed. That was my Valentine's Day gift. He was impressed that I chose to come to Nerd for Valentine's Day instead of going somewhere and having, a fancy vacation or whatever. And that was the best time of my life. And I do think that doing that built a relationship that makes me solid, because when I have a question, you know who the first person I get to text and call?
Kevin.
The greatest people of reticulated python production. And that is just absolutely just a blessing for me. It's unreal. I tell them all the time, I'm still pinching myself, that it's you. All right, then I get over it and then we have our fun conversations. But I think that what I would like to see, and that's why I was saying to you, Gary, I love having this panel. I love meeting Gina and I love meeting Rachel. I think that a lot of the women we have behind the scenes, and it's way more than us. And I wish that we had a platform and a forum that we knew how to reach out all to each other and maybe do more of these lives, Gary, that it introduces us to more and more of us. And I love that a man is conducting this. You know what I mean? Like, it's just something about this. And I said, I look forward to it because now I know Gina has 23. I know Rachel has 1. And, you know, if I ever produce, you know, a super dwarf down the line or whatever, I know that these are people that I can actually go to for information. There's not a lot of women that as breeders and keepers that you can just pick up the phone and say, hey, I know you got 10 reticulated pythons. We exist, but we don't come in the forefront because of what I just said.
Right. I'm going to get Jen this question real quick. I'm going to put this next one up before I lose the question. But Jen, go ahead and answer that question. And I'm going to actually change a little bit because it did say to sell and keep or sell and breed. Do you experience anything from people as far as being a woman keeper with a reticulated python?
That was the most. When I was thinking about this panel, I was like, is there really a stigma? And there is, because I see it in Facebook groups. Horrible. Don't join. Keepers don't join Facebook groups. But there really is a stigma. And I was like, in this day and age, when anybody can choose to express themselves in any way they see fit, like in any way you're passionate about, you can literally pick your gender. You know, you can really advocate for yourself these days. Is this really a thing? And it really is. It is. I was like, is this still it's such a small, weird thing, but it is a thing. It still is. And you know, I mean, like, we're so far past, like, girls are all Barbies and unicorns and ballet, and boys are in Tonka trucks and turtles and dirt and snakes. Like, we're so far past that, but it's still a thing. And you know, I love unicorns, and I also love my snakes, and at any given time I have a snake or a spider in my hair, and you know, I'm all over the board. But yeah, it's kind of sad that it's still like separate teams. And through having a retic, honestly, having snakes in general, I've met such people that don't believe in that stigma and don't believe in sides. It's really great, and it makes me feel better. But there is still that, you know, snakes are for boys and kittens are for girls. And yeah, I have cats, but I also have snakes, and I have lizards, and I have tarantulas, and you know, I have pink things and I have black things. And I don't know. It's just really sad that there's a division. It's sad.
So before we go to this next question, I want to put this out there. Number one is that this is not the 80s anymore. We are in the 21st century, and this panel was to celebrate women, retic owners, women owning retics in general, because they're big animals. They're usually, when you see a woman handling it, and like Nikki said, taking better care than some men. You know what I mean? I get a lot out of watching Jen and Abby and how you guys keep your animals. It's like, that's the stuff that makes me go to my enclosures and go, wow, what if I did this? What if I went bioactive? And then I'm contacting Jen going, okay, tell me about bioactive, because I know nothing about it. We all need each other. This isn't about men doing things better than women, or this isn't all together thing.
It's about people.
It's also important to celebrate, you know, and let people see that retics are not just for men. You know what I mean? So, and I'm going to throw this question at Gina. What advice do you offer incoming women coming into the community, into the retic community?
I think it definitely helps if you can find like a mentor in the community, especially a woman mentor. I'll offer myself. I haven't bred yet, but I've been keeping for retics for 3 years and reptiles for over 22 years. So I'm happy to help anybody that has questions. So definitely like find somebody, and don't let the Facebook groups get you down. The Facebook
Oh
groups
God,
are a
no.
hot
Facebook,
mess.
stay off the Facebook
Just
groups.
don't even
Yeah, don't.
join the Facebook groups. Just you know, there are some other great communities like the Retic Lounge. They've set up a really cool Discord, and but some of the yeah, just reach out. I think the biggest thing is if you find somebody that you look up to, reach out to them, because 9 times out of 10, they're going to be willing to help you. I know it can be scared to reach out to somebody you don't know, but when you're passionate about something and somebody asks you to share your passion with them, like, isn't that the most exciting thing in the world?
Oh, everybody loves to talk
Yeah.
about what they love.
Exactly. So yeah, don't be afraid to reach out to somebody in the community. So.
Thanks, Gina. I'm going to give this one to you, Nikki.
One of the things I'm really big on is, and it goes into what we're talking about, how I want to be respected for what I do and not being a woman. So what I would say is beware of the misogyny. Beware of those people who only welcome you in if you wear makeup and if you half naked and if you got a snake running down your cleavage and stuff like that, right? We can present our animals without doing that. Now, I'm not saying, they are models, do that if that's what you do. I'm not saying that, but there are some women who come in, and for me as a businesswoman in any business, I want to always be respected for what I do, for the animals that I create first. The beauty and everything else that comes with it, for all of us beautiful women doing this, that's left for our husbands and our children and everybody else. I think one of the mistakes that women can make is coming in here and trying to, in any business, trying to cross the line by feeding into that misogyny of our sexuality, and it ends up burning you down the end when you do become a breeder. People now know you for the girl with the snake down your breast, or the woman with the snake down your breast, or the one who's always half naked, and not the person who's producing the amazing animal that's also in that picture. So I just think women should be cautious of that.
That is true. Whether you want to hear that or not, that's truth right there. That is absolute truth. Jen, go ahead.
No, I want to add out there. There's a lot of people that say, if you want a snake, there's a beginner snake. Get a corn snake. Get a ball python. But, a retic, a super dwarf retic, could very well be your beginner snake. It definitely could be. You just have to take the time, and you have to take the research. You have to look into it. These animals are not difficult to keep at all, and they're super rewarding. So if you take the person that is only going to have 1 or 2 or 3 snakes in their life, and they want the first snake, you don't have to get a corn snake. You could get a super dwarf retic, but you have to be willing to look into it and be ready for it. I think any snake could be your first snake. A carpet python could be your first snake. A Brazilian rainbow boa could be your first snake. A doomerals could be your first snake. A true red tail could be your first snake. But a super dwarf could be your first snake, and so rewarding, and you could be so happy with it. But you have to just do your homework.
Yeah.
Just do your homework.
I'm laughing because a young corn snake and a young super dwarf kind of moves alike. The only
different.
The only difference is because a corn snake's food response is off the chain too. That's one of my best eaters in here is the corn snake.
Yeah.
But the only difference is, of course, the bite.
This is a young. He's a year old and he should be bigger, shouldn't you? Yes. But he's a lot more mellow than a corn snake. So
I agree with you. I feel like, and I think I said this to you, Gary, before, it was so many years that I researched the reticulated python. And I researched it based on, everybody experiences with the F1 generation and what you saw on TV and things like that. Had I came out of that confusion, I would say even 10 years ago, I could have very well started off with a reticulated python if it was F2, F3, 32 years ago when I started. I don't think that when I started, the reticulated python that existed at that time out the wild is something that I wanted to have to worry about taming down and let it be in my first experience of a snake. I can remember some of those visions way back then of just how they were, how they moved. And they wasn't used to human beings at that particular point. What we have today are totally different animals from 32 years ago.
By far, but they're so captive bred by this point. Right. The generations are so far from their mainland existence that they're practically desensitized to human touch from birth. Yeah, I mean it's incredible. It's incredible. I got a couple more questions here for you guys. The first one, we've talked a lot about significant others. So let's talk about significant others for a minute. Do your significant others participate? I'm pretty sure that Gina's does, but in my household, my wife, she's got the lizards, I've got the snakes. She's got the torts too. She's not a big fan of the retics, but let's go to Gina with this one. How is it in your household? Is it a team? Is it like the retics are yours and something else is his, or how does that work?
So basically, all the animals are mine.
See, this is what I'm talking about right here. This is awesome.
Yeah, this is my dream since I was a kid. Like, I wanted to live in the country with a bunch of animals. So this is my dream, and he just supports me, and he loves like the dogs and cats. Like, he helps a lot with them. With the snakes, he's a little more cautious, but he's warming up to them, and like he'll help me build enclosures and stuff like that. But he still doesn't want to hold them or anything. But he'll come and he'll ask about them, like, oh, how was so-and-so today? Or, so it's really cute. And I have one boa, and that's his favorite. He's always checking on her. Her names are Bosa. And he's like, how's my girl? And he loves her. So it's just funny to see that because he would never go out and, he would never have these by himself, but it's really cool that he lets me do this and lets me have fun with it and that he supports me. So
that sounds like my household. I mean, almost to a T. My wife has the lizards, the torts, the cats, the dogs, the horses, the sheep, but she doesn't really, the snakes aren't her thing. She'll hold them if I need to have them held to like change out waters or something, but that's about it. She doesn't come up to me and go, hey, will you get Cora out for me?
Katie's badass. All day. All day. Badass, Katie.
All right. What about you, Jen? You go for this one.
Oh God. I it's kind of funny because I kept telling my fiance Taris that I was doing this. He constantly tells me, you're weird. And I go, why am I weird? And he goes, because you like snakes and spiders and you're not a typical girl. And I'm like,
see, it goes back to that stigma thing.
Yeah. And I'm like, but I'm still buying lipstick and pantyhose. So like, but I remember that when I first wanted to buy a snake and and I was like, I'm going to get a ball python. How do you feel about that? And he was like, I don't care. And I was like, okay, well, I'm going to buy like 9 more. And he was like, all right. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to get a king snake and a hognose snake and a retic and but I think I've changed him because I recently brought him, well, not recently, it was January. We went to an expo in PA and he was way more into it than I was. He was like, oh man, all this and all that. Oh yeah. I mean, he's master of our tortoises. I I am not allowed. Not, he is the master of the tortoises.
Didn't you get like 3 tortoises at once?
Yeah,
Wow.
he's building an army of tortoises, and he is the master of them, and I do not have anything to do with them. He is in charge of bath time and feeding and head rubs, and you can only give them head rubs in a specific time and place. So I'm like, okay, you're cool. You have the tortoises and I have the legless creatures, I guess. I don't know. But yeah, he's turning into a reptile person. And when we first got together, it was funny because he even told, like, I have cats. And he was like, I'm a dog person. And I was like, well, sorry, I'm a cat person. And no, he's a total cat person. He's anything that I have person now. He's on board. He's great. He built like we have this like PVC like jungle gym for the snakes that he was all into. He's set up enclosures. He's all into the reptiles now. He's 100% on board, and it's great.
So it's almost like a team effort for you guys.
Oh yeah, and he even bought the last 2 reptiles he bought for me that were like significantly priced. So I didn't have to pull the whole. No, I've had this one for months, or I've had it lost and found, or it was on the street, or it was going to be euthanized. You know, I didn't have to pull all that BS because he got them for me. So I'm like, score.
Awesome. All right, Nikki, how about you?
So, married 15 years. My husband didn't touch a snake for the first time until my birthday last year. That was a ball python. And that was one of my birthday gifts. He was like, babe, I think I'm going to do it. I'm going to touch a snake. And he did it. I couldn't believe it. And then a week later, he started picking up the tiger reticulated python. And then now he's so much better. The only ones he won't deal with is the boas. And that's because the boas he can't read. You know, boas move differently. So it looks like they're going to strike, but they're not, you know, type of thing.
Yeah, they just relax in a strike position.
Yeah. So he don't deal with them, but he's now hands-on with the retics. He has a couple of the Xantic ball pythons. They're his. But I never thought I would see the day. Like, he was a person who was terrified of snakes. He grew up in the South. So he looked at snakes totally different from I did, you know, the way I did. But all of the animals are mine, including the dogs, although he does deal with the Rottweiler and the Yorkie Poo. The Yorkie Poo sleeps with us, so it's our baby. But I think I'm more impressed with, like, he always did the building, and he will buy snakes. If I, you know, the Motley Moschino was a early Christmas gift a few years ago. So he'll buy them and things like that, but he would never touch them. But the funny thing is the rooms the Retics in, he wouldn't even come in these rooms at one point. Like, you would see him on camera, the camera would beep, and he's turning out a light, and my husband is 6'2", and all you can see is an arm coming around here trying to hit the light. And now to see him walking in and the doors are off, and, you know, we're cleaning and snakes are all everywhere, and he's not afraid. It's amazing, but I'm not shocked, because at some point when you're passionate about something and that person loves you, even though they may not become 110% involved, they become intrigued with what in the world intrigues you so much about the animal.
What is this woman doing in this room all day?
Who sits down here talking to snakes all day?
It rubs off. It rubs off. My wife and I have been together for almost 20 years, and we've been married for 17. And, you know, she had no reptiles whatsoever when we got together. I moved in with a couple of reptiles, and all of a sudden now she's got a tegu, she's got a Euromastix, she's got a beardy, she's got a leopard gecko, she's got 2 sulcatas. I mean, like, she just doesn't like the snakes. She doesn't trust the snakes as much as I do.
It's because they don't have legs and they don't blink, Gary.
All right. So we are going to end this with one final question for everybody. And it's going to be, actually, it's not so much a question. It's really to support USARK Florida. I am huge on supporting either one of these organizations. You know, they really need our support right now. And in that closing, yes, the new design from Adelaine. Yes,
Yes, that's the tortoise. Everybody was
Very nice.
for that.
Very nice.
you should buy the shirt anyways. Go to usarc.org and buy the new shirt. So in final thoughts, I'm going to start with Gina. Give us your thoughts. How do you support USARC Florida? And if you would like, tell everybody how they can get a hold of you, social media and things like that.
Okay, so yeah, I'm a silver member of USARC, and I recently became a bronze, I think it's a bronze member of USARC Florida as well. So I think it is super important that if you keep any type of animal, honestly, that you support USARC and USARC Florida, both of them. And for the USARC Florida one, you don't even have to pay monthly. You can sign up as a member and it's free for USARC Florida.
It is.
So
Yeah.
definitely just do that, because then you can get alerts. And then when they see the membership list, you're on there, because the numbers matter. And with USARC, the national USARC, I mean, it's just so important. If you keep reptiles, if you love reptiles, if you want reptiles to be, in our houses for generations to come, then you have to. There's no excuse. So just make sure you support USARC. It's huge, because without them, we wouldn't have these animals in our homes. So
That's very true. Very true. Nikki, go ahead.
I mean, another thing, if I had it my way, every time you purchase an animal, you would have to show a card, just like you have to show your concealed carry to say that I can't carry an animal. I'm
Definitely.
I'm also a member of USARC National and USARC Florida, and an actual member, like Gina said. I want to be updated. I want to know what's going on. I volunteer my services, not just nationally, but I also volunteer my services locally at our local shows. Every video that you see on my YouTube page, Lady Tiz Exotics, you will see USARC mentioned in that video. There's always in the description the support of USARC and the links to support USARC Florida as well. Also, I'm always rocking my USARC apparel as well. One of the things that the benefit of being a member is getting the t-shirts and people asking what it means, because it attracts people. Like if you see Gary right now on the street, most people think that's some type of government entity that they don't know about. And so it gives us, and I'm right here. I'm out 5 minutes outside of Washington, D.C. So I'm asked all the time, where do I work in the government? And it's just the USARC shirt. And then I get to explain what that means. And this, it creates a whole nother conversation for people. So I think I am a fond believer that you cannot give me a justification of owning a reptile, which is one of the most expensive expenses next to guns, is reptiles, and not have $40 to get a simple membership for USARC. It's not, the why is no longer excuse. It's not about money at that particular point. It's that you just don't want to, and explain to the likes of us why you don't want to, so we can help get you through some of those challenges so that we can lead you to a membership.
Great. And like I said, where can people find you if they're looking for you?
So you can find me most of the time on YouTube, Lady Tiz Exotics. I have two podcasts, one that comes on Monday morning, which is 2 Peas in a Podcast at 8 o'clock with my very, very good friend, the Snake God, or also known as DW Exotics. Then I have Reptiles and Cocktails, where Gary was my guest today at 1 o'clock p.m. every single Saturday. There is a Reptiles and Cocktails. And then I do educational videos on reticulated pythons, on all the other animals, on the tables, the lizards, all of that. And my channel is more to help new keepers and experienced keepers with some new animals, if that makes sense. I would say when it comes to reticulated pythons, I'm definitely one of my favorite channels to watch, along with Tim's and, a few others that's out there. I wish I could see more of my sisters doing YouTube videos so people can see that, Gina has 23 reticulated pythons over there. That is a wish for me. You can also find me on Instagram as well.
Awesome. Gina, did you give us information on where they can find you if they're looking for you?
No. Right now I just have my Instagram, Ruck Reptiles. So I've thought about starting a YouTube, but it's that's a lot of work, and I don't know. I'm kind of introverted, so I'm kind of nervous about that. So, but
That's okay. There's a lot of women here, and they're looking to network. So I just want to make sure if they're looking to network, they know how to find you guys. Jen, how about you?
I mean, I am not into the YouTube because I'm not as well versed as Gary or Nicole here, but I'm most active on Instagram, Jenny, JENNIE Cogs. I just got me snakes and me lizards on there. But actually going back to Christina's question before for new keepers is join USARK and USARK Florida. Like I was sad to learn that, well, for myself, I didn't even know about USARK until the Lasiac crisis came around. Like I had been purchasing reptiles from various breeders who were, great breeders, great, wonderful, but I didn't know until there was an emergency. So I guess going back to her question, my advice for people getting into retics, getting into any sort of reptile hobby is to, support USARK and support USARK Florida because, God, we're up against it. We're up against it. It's terrible right now. So, educate yourself. And that goes back to what we were saying before, research, educate, just be informed. Be informed before you keep any animal. It's going to benefit you. It's going to benefit the animal. It's going to benefit the hobby, which is great. You're going to meet great people through this hobby. Great people, beautiful, wonderful, attractive people. Just great people that are going to be in your corner. Someone you can call and say, hey, I'm having a problem with this. I'm having a problem with that. Let's just be a community, like a real community. And it's been great so far. So let's continue this. Let's keep going.
That's awesome. Thank you. And I'd like to close out on this with the whole USARK and USARK Florida is that we shouldn't have to wait for something to happen.
Right.
That's when everybody wants to jump on the ship. If nothing's happening, it's smooth sailing, everybody starts to forget about USARK Florida. But what people don't understand is that's when USARK is doing their work.
Right.
That's when they find out what's going on. And not only do they find out what's going on, but they make it so easy for us to do work. If you're in California and something is happening in Washington, what can you do as a USARK member in California? Just having that membership helps. Just being a member helps out. But if you're in Washington, USARK will put together stuff. All you've got to do is fill out a couple of things and send it off, and you're done. Less than 5 minutes worth of work. And if you're involved in this community, what I see people doing is they're creating letters, taking their names out, sending it out, and saying, just stick your name here.
Yeah, just use my letter. Yeah.
Yeah. People are so helpful. We shouldn't have to wait for a crisis to pump USARK. Not at all. It should be a requirement. If you own a reptile, you should be a member of USARK. That's just.
And it doesn't have to be a large constrictor because I think a lot of people just always think that it's our animals that can be impacted. And if you haven't noticed, it's not just reticulated pythons. It's not just Burmese pythons. It's all animals.
It's going to be a real problem when someone can't get a guinea pig for their niece, or a hedgehog or a sugar glider or a parrot, that's when they're going to realize that there's a real problem around.
Yeah.
Or when you show up to your next reptile expo and there's no reptiles to see.
Well, that too. Yeah. There's nothing but mugs and keychains.
You know, and that's
Right.
too late for the breeders to get involved, because that's another thing. I'm with all the breeders in Florida, and I will say this over and over and over again.
Yeah.
It was very disheartening to find out how many people were not a part of USARK Florida. And at a recent live that Jay did, he shared the statistics. Like, most of the money came from people outside of the state of Florida. So it's a little, hard sell to get the support nationally if the people in Florida are not taking action themselves. It's kind of like saying, hey, come join the army, but I'm a Marine,
Right.
You have to really, really be committed to it. But I do love the fact, like I said, that people outside of the state understands the importance of it, and that we did represent. But could you imagine how big the state of Florida is if the reptile keepers there and the breeders there took that to a whole nother level? It put that passion together, the passion for USARK Florida and your animals and your selling of them together, and we fix a major problem in the reptile community.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It takes all of us. It really does. And I'm going to end with this. I see that Jeremy said they're gunning for fish too. Remember, USARK, if you go back to recent battles, they're not just trying to protect our reptiles.
No, yeah. It's anything that's not a cat or a dog or a
Always
livestock, people. Like, it's your parrots, it's your fish, it's your axolotls, it's your hedgehogs, it's your guinea pigs, it's your gerbils, it's your hamsters.
Yeah. So please, if you're not a member, become a member of USARK or USARK Florida. And I'm going to end
We'll
with
help
this.
you if you're not. We'll do
That's
it.
right. You've got at least 2 people in this panel who will buy your membership for you. If you need a USARK membership and you can't afford it, go to usark.org.
Let's do it.
Purchase
Let's
a
do
bronze
the
membership.
thing. Let's do the thing.
Yes. Purchase your bronze membership, screenshot a receipt to me or Jen. We will reimburse you the $40 as long as you commit to save $40 for the next year.
And
So
not
everybody
even
else-
you. If it's your niece, if it's your kid, if it's your sister, if it's your uncle, like let's get everybody involved.
Yeah.
Let's just.
So everybody, I want to say thank you so very much for taking time. And it's probably 10:30 on the East Coast. I want to thank you guys for staying up with me and sharing your passion, sharing your stories. Thank you everybody who chimed in, who had a question, who's been part of this live stream. This is amazing. This is what this is about to me. It's about community. It's about sharing our passion with others and educating each other. So again, I want to thank you guys, and that's it. I don't have any fancy endings, you guys, so we're just going to cut the cameras and say goodbye.
Thank you,
Thank you guys so much.
Goodbye, everybody.